I was shut down over Laos, and of course I was captured by the Pathet Lao. We start walking towards east, towards Vietnam, and about 2.5 weeks later I was turned over to the Vietcong. I looked forward to coming to the camp. I've been beaten so much, I have lost so much blood, I've been unconscious so many times. I wanted to share my misery with someone else. Other pilots, I was hoping to see someone, maybe meet someone that I've known before. Maybe a doctor would be there, but it was totally different than what I expected. First of all, I thought I was all alone in this camp. High bamboo walls on the side. The huts were built out of grass and out of bamboo. I was let in. They threw me into one of the huts. And only 3 hours later, they opened the door and let the other guys come out. I couldn't believe my eyes. The first guy was carrying his intestines around his hand. There were 6 of them. There were 4 Thais, 2 Americans, Dwayne Martin, who became my friend later on. Next guy came out. He had no teeth. With a rusty nail in the rock, they would knock each other's teeth in to let the pus out. They'd been there 2.5 years. It was just awful. I looked at them. I realized that's exactly what I'm going to look in 6 months. So I said, I'm leaving tonight. No, I was advised not to because of the rain. We needed the water to drink. At nights, we would be handcuffed. Sometimes we would get cross-handcuffed, sometimes straight-handcuffed. Cross-handcuffed, this is a more modern handcuff, would be like that. Left wrist would go to the right wrist of the guy on my right, and my right wrist would go to the left wrist of the guy on my left. This way would be together. Everybody had dysentery 20 times a night. This guy made a motion, this guy had to make the motion. On top of it, our legs were on foot blocks, big wooden blocks they made. Our feet would be driven through there. A pen would come in between. Sometimes would be longer, sometimes it would be shorter. And this is the way they expected to sleep. We had no blankets. It was miserable cold. As far as food, they themselves were very poor. At the beginning, we would get a handful of rice, then later on a handful of rice for all of us. Sometimes they would catch a deer. They would cut a deer open. They would take the grass out from the inside. That's what we would get to eat. They would keep the meat. They would take the meat and stuff it in a bamboo container. After 4 or 5 days, it would rot so bad for themselves. They would come in with a towel. They would pour it out. It would be white, covered with maggot. It would stink to high heaven. First time I tried it, vomited. But if you didn't eat it, you just died. We were lucky though, because we couldn't go to the bathrooms. Once every 3 or 4 weeks, they would let us out. We would go to the bathroom right below us. It would stink to high heaven. I mean, it was awful. But there were rats down there. But we couldn't catch the rats. But there was a snake there. And every so often, we were lucky to catch that snake. We would look. We would lay on our bellies. We would watch the snake line up on the rat. Get a hold of the rat. We had the stick. We would get the snake. We pulled the snake up. We pulled the rat out. We cut the rat apart. And everybody got his share. We lost, of course, a lot of weight waiting for the rain to come, but we had to supplement our food for the day that we left for freedom.
Initially February and March, we were allowed to go to the bathroom in the morning for about 2 minutes. And we have a couple of tubes you go in at night, and you can imagine you have a big block in woods, and you're handcuffed like that, and you got to go to the bathroom at night with a guy having diarrhea or dysentery. So it was a real mess, but while we walked down, we run down like hell. It's about a 20 or 30 foot walk to the hole, and while we did this, they shot at us. And it got so close that some of the prisoners came back with black in the face or greased their hair with a bullet, and so we didn't want to go anymore. We rather stayed with the tubes.
Why were they shooting? The question is, why were they shooting at you?
Just harassment. They will take a gun and they show it to you that they put a round in it and they put it right on your head and they take the safety off and they go click, 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 and they laugh. And stuff like that. So, lucky to be here.
Our plan to escape from this prison camp was planned right down to the last detail. We had 6 months. We're waiting for the monsoon rain. The day came. The cook yelled, "Chow time." I stripped my blocks, I let myself to the floor. I was underneath my hut now. I crawled quickly over to the logs, those heavy logs that I had to lift out. I actually loosened them the day before. My heart was really pounding. I crawled across. I came to this fence. I untied the rattan, slipped the bamboo up and went through this door, and I leaped in this hut. There were 3 rifles in there. 2 I passed away, and the other one I kept. I ran out in the open. Nobody came from this side except the guards. They're running in my direction. I must have heard or seen the other guys. And this big shootout started. All of a sudden the bullets were flying. Somehow we had miscalculated. Somebody had a rifle in there. I had this submachine gun in my hand. I'd never shot one before. When I pulled the trigger, it practically flew out of my hand. it raised up like that, and this allowed them to close this distance real quick. They came within 2 or 3 feet from me. The moron, one of the guys, had a machete in his hand. He came within 4 or 5 feet. I shot him through the hip. It lifted him up. It threw him down to the ground. Next thing I'm looking up, he's getting up again. He still had the machete. He's still coming at me. Of course, this time I couldn't miss. He was right 2 or 3 feet in front of me. I couldn't believe it. I didn't have a scratch. There's 5 dead guards laying on the ground. 2 of them got away. They ran a zigzag pattern. They got in the jungle. I knew then, right then and there, they would get help, and we had to get out of there. Where was Dwayne? I saw him behind this bush over here. He had vomited. I yelled to him, Dwayne, let's get out here, let's get out of here. We took off, we ran down between this kitchen, we ran amongst those dead guys laying on the ground, and it was very important because our shoes were tied together in a bundle, we're hanging on this hut over here. The shoes we needed in the jungle, but when we got there, they were already taken. The other guys must have taken them, run off with them. And then Dwayne and I, we had no choice but to turn around. Barefoot, we ran into the jungle. There we were on this river, this beautiful river drifting down between hills and mountains for a hour and a half down towards Thailand. I thought I heard something. I said, Dwayne, do you hear anything? But then it got quiet again. But when we came around the next hill, we heard at the same time. We both yelled waterfalls. He leaped off. I jumped in the water. I was actually in water. I grabbed the rifles. I kicked as hard as I could. I was taking off. I was going then towards the side. Dwayne was already nearly over there, but I had those rifles in my arm and I couldn't really swim that fast. And the current started picking up and quicker. And I thought I wouldn't make it. And finally, there was a couple of rocks sticking out. I clung all these rocks and I looked over the side, and our raft had tumbled down to 300 feet, disintegrated on the bottom, and we were speechless. I looked at Dwayne. He was snow white. We had just escaped death. I mean, it was truly touch and go. We were speechless. We just sat there after I made it to shore, trying to decide what to do. One of the rifles we threw away. It was vertical going down on both sides. We had a very difficult time because it was full of green moss. During the rainy season, the ground was very muddy, and on the vines we were sliding down, helping each other down, and late in the evening we arrived from the bottom. But then later on we made this beautiful fire. We waved at night to the airplane. They saw us, they circled overhead, and we knew we were going to be rescued that next morning. Later, we hugged each other, we cried together, we talked about who's going to helicopter first, what are we going to eat, who are we going to call. And then morning came and we waited, and nothing happened. It was a blow, what a disappointment. But then we had to move on because we were starving to death. In fact, we couldn't even walk anymore. We were crawling and laying on our knees down this small little trail, and all of a sudden there was a small boy on our left. He was carrying a water container over his shoulder, and all of a sudden there was all this commotion. People were running all over each way. There was noise. Dwayne and I, right away, we were on our knees, and we put our hands together. We said, hello, Sabai. Dwayne then started sitting back and started getting up. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. I looked over there. A villager was standing there. He had a machete in his hand high above his head. He just hesitated for a second, and then he swung. He swung for me. I ducked. It missed me by a few inches. He hit Dwayne in the upper leg. The blade was deeply buried in it. Dwayne screamed. He reached down. He grabbed his leg, screaming. And with the next swipe, Dwayne's head came off. Blood squirting out. I started screaming. I leaped toward this villager. He turned around. He ran. In fact, they all started running. And unknowns to me, I had reached down and grabbed this rubber sole from his foot. I turned around and ran. When 30 seconds before, I was crawling along. Dwayne, my friend, he was gone. And from then on, my motions, my progress became mechanical. In fact, I couldn't care less if I would live or die. But then later on, there was this bear, this beautiful bear that was following me. It was circling me, in fact, sometimes, and it was gone. I missed it. It was just like a dog. It was just like a pet. Of course, I knew this bear was there. He was waiting to eat me. When I think about it, this bear meant death to me. And it is really ironic. That's the only friend I had at the end was death.
And I went down on the deck, and I saw this big wide river coming out of the mountain. I thought, I'll go up that as the first shot. And I made that 90-degree bank and looked down, and there was that rock and this nut sitting down there waving at me. And I thought that was nice, and flew on. I must have gone 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll never know whatever made me come back.